Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about civics and how you can find accurate civic information on the internet. Now, civics is the study of government and the study of elections, how we get government officials into office. Now, whether you vote or you don't vote, whether you care about politics or don't care about politics, civics is a large part of the social studies component of the HiSET test. So you do need to know about civics, how politics work, and where to get accurate information. So, in that we're in the run up to a presidential election, which happens every 4 years, this is a big year for civics and is much bigger than the in-between elections that happen on the off years. So let's talk about civics and what's happening right now. So I want to show you this website. It's called Ballotpedia, and if you look at it, you can see it's ballotpedia.org. O-R-G. And what does org stand for? I know you all just said organization, which means yes, this website is a nonprofit. And it's a nonprofit with its goal is to teach people about how civics work so they can be engaged and educated voters. If we wanted to know how they are funded and what they are about, we would go all the way down to the very, very bottom of this website and you can learn all about them. How the media works, what the history is, what their scope is, and how they are independent, which means that this website does not promote one particular candidate over another. It seeks to give the most accurate information. So, this is for the entire United States, but what if we wanted to learn about what's happening in Massachusetts? Because that's where we live. So, we would type in Massachusetts, and then let's look at the elections 2020. Okay, this brings up information about the election that's happening this year. And what day is an election day? That's right, it is November 3rd, a Tuesday. And so why is it on a Tuesday? Well, fun fact, it's on a Tuesday because way, way back when they started elections, people wouldn't travel on Sundays. It was considered against many people's religious principles. Everybody would stay home on a Sunday or go to church for most of the day. And so they wouldn't want to put it on a Monday because they wanted to give people time to travel to their polling stations because that used to take a lot longer than it does now. All right, so now we're looking at Massachusetts elections. Now, the first thing you see is be an informed voter. Now, if you clicked right here, you could put in your actual address. It does not keep that information, but you put in your address and it would show you what your exact ballot would look like for you. But we're just going to look generally at what's happening in Massachusetts. Okay, we all get to vote on the president. Do you know how many presidential candidates are running this year? Let's see. So, how many candidates are running? Now, if you just went by the ads on television, you would think that there would be 2 candidates, but actually there are 4 candidates. 1, 2, 3, 4. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Joe Jorgensen, and Howie Hawkins. And the reason there are 4 is there are the 2 main parties that most people vote for, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but there's also a Libertarian candidate and a Green Party candidate. Libertarians tend to be pretty far right or conservative in their viewpoints, and Green parties tend to be pretty far left with a concern about the environment. Okay, so there are our presidential candidates. So let's back up and see what else is on there. All right, what about the Senate? How many senators are there? If you said 100, you are correct. There are 2 from every state, even our tiny little state of Massachusetts. So, again, it will tell you when the election date is, the 3rd, and we can see who is running in the Senate. So we'll elect 1 member of the Senate. So, you can see there's also a whole bunch of information over here about, we already had the primary where we picked who was going to be on the ballot and when the polling times are 7 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. But you should also know that in this year you can vote either in advance by mail or you can vote early, which are ways to avoid crowds because some people are concerned about the coronavirus. Now, does Massachusetts have same-day registration? Meaning if you're not registered to vote now, can you just show up on election day, November 3rd, and vote? No, you cannot. You have to be registered in advance, and that deadline is coming up quite quickly. It is October 24th. So you can see registration deadline, October 24th. However, you can register online. So if you feel very excited after this unit, and of course you always feel excited after technology units, you can register to vote right there. All right, so we find out who is on the ballot. For the Senate, we can find out who's on the ballot for the House and all the other state elections. Now, there are also really important ballot measures. I'm going to back up. So hang with me for a second. There are ballot measures on our Massachusetts ballots. Now, ballot measures in this state, and it's different for every state, in this state, you can put a ballot measure on if you get enough signatures and it can go on the ballot. It takes quite a while, it takes many years to get it on, but there are 2 ballot measures this year. There's the Massachusetts Ranked Choice Voting Initiative, and there's the Massachusetts Right to Repair Initiative. So let's look at the Right to Repair one first off. Now, the challenge with ballot measures is they're always very confusing, even if you do quite a bit of research. And I'm sort of a political junkie, so I always do a lot of research, but they're very confusing of the way they're written. And you have to really make sure you understand what they're asking. In some ways, it's very much like the essay portion of the HiCIT, where you have to be very clear on the directions so you understand if they're asking you to write a persuasive essay or a pro-con essay, if they're asking you to cite sources or what they actually want. The same thing is true for the ballot initiative. So sometimes they'll write it such that a yes vote actually means no and a no vote actually means yes. It's very confusing. So let's look at Massachusetts question 1. So while I'm thinking about this one is all about the right to repair law for your vehicle. So let me ask you, do you drive a car or ride in a car or go anywhere in a car? I'm thinking that most of you do. So if that is true, you are in some ways dependent on cars, and cars always have to be repaired, right? So this question is about who gets the information to repair a car. So the ballot measure asks if we should have the right to repair our cars, but that's not really what the actual question is. It isn't about whether I have the right to get under the hood of my car and repair it. It's actually much more about who gets the information about how to repair it. I saw one really good analogy, and it said, we tend to think of cars as mechanical things, kind of like a toaster that you take it apart and put it back together. But these days, cars have so many electronic and mostly computerized parts that your car is actually a lot more like a cell phone than it is like a toaster. And all of that information about your car, what's going right, what's going wrong, when it was repaired, and how, gets stored in your car. And right now, when you take it to a place to get repaired, they plug in your car, they get the data off, and they see what's what. Well, the challenge is, as newer and newer cars are being made, that data is now being transmitted through Wi-Fi without having to plug in a car. And it's called telemetry, or how a car is giving the information. And the challenge is that right now, the only people who have access to that Wi-Fi data are dealers. So a Honda dealer or a Ford dealer or a Toyota dealer. Whereas if you take your car to Joe's Garage on the corner, that information won't be shared with Joe's Garage because Joe's Garage doesn't have access to that Wi-Fi information. So this is what would change. Question 1, if you voted yes and it passed, would require that they install a standardized open data platform beginning with model year 2022. And that means that the computer information would be available to everyone. And then anyone, especially an owner, you or me, could access that through a mobile device application. So on our phone, we could access that information. Right now, we do have a right to repair law, but it exempts these Wi-Fi or computer sent information. And so right now, the telematics systems aren't available to you or me or Joe's Garage. So this talks about when the first right to repair, and then this is the really interesting part, and this tells you a lot about what's going on. So the people who are for yes, we should be able to, are the Right to Repair Coalition. And it's interesting to see who these people are because it's AutoZone, O'Reilly Auto Parts, Advanced Auto Parts. These are people who sell parts to mechanics or people like you and me who are able to fix our cars. So those are the people who want this to pass because obviously it impacts their bottom line. Now, who are the people against it? They're called the Coalition for Safe and Secure Data. Their problem with this measure is they think, well, this data isn't being protected, and now lots of people are going to get information about how I drive and how my car goes. Well, who's against the measure? And you can see it's Ford Motor Company, Honda Motor Company, Nissan Motor Company, Toyota, General Motors, all the people who make cars, all the people who already have access to these telemetrics. And so it's very interesting to see who is for it and who is against it. And really, it's mostly about economics. It's not really about safety or access for you and me, the consumer. And that's always the most interesting part of politics, to see who's behind the campaigns. So, what this would mean if it passed is that manufacturers would have to sell cars with this open data platform. If it fails, everything stays exactly as it is now. So, based on that information, you can make a much different decision about whether you are for it or against it, having probably a lot less to do with whether I really want to fix my car, but who do I want to have access to fix my car? And am I worried about my data about driving and how I use my car being out there? Is my data going to be less secure if everybody can access it? And do I care about that data? Now, you know me, the technology person, I would say you should always care about your data. But in this instance, I don't know. It's a very good question. Am I willing to trade less security for my data for being able to pick whatever repair shop I want to go to rather than I drive a Honda, rather than having to go to the Honda dealer? Great question. Okay, there is one other question on the ballot, and that's Massachusetts question number 2. This is a complicated one. It's about ranked choice voting. And this is about when there are a lot of people on the ballot, especially in a primary ballot, if there are a lot of people who are running for that office. And so how do you choose? Some people feel like if they choose one person and that person doesn't get enough of the vote, they've sort of wasted their vote. This really came to a head this year where there was a highly contested state Senate seat, and there were 9 people running for the office. And the person who finally won after lots of recounts got less than 23% of the vote. So people thought, well, that's not really a mandate from the people that this person is the one we want to represent us. And so folks decided, well, let's get ranked choice voting, which means I could put down my first choice, my second choice, and my third choice. So if my first choice person doesn't have anywhere near the number of votes, they come in last, for instance, that person gets eliminated, and then my second choice vote counts. And they would go so on until somebody got 50% of the vote. And so ranked choice voting, let's see what that looks like. Who's for and against? For the campaign, they have quite a bit of money in voter choice in Massachusetts. What's interesting about this measure is there is very little opposition to this measure. Only $2,000 in contributions versus the For campaign has $5.7 million in contributions. And so most people either think ranked choice voting is a good idea or they really don't care. You can still go in and just pick one choice. What most people are concerned about is it just means you have to be an even more educated voter to participate. So that's what your ballot looks like. I would encourage you, number 1, to go on Ballotpedia, go to what's on your ballot over here, and it will load your sample ballot. You put in your address, it will not keep your information. You put in your street, your city and state, and it will show you your exact ballot. So that's your homework piece number 1. Your homework piece number 2 is an ever fun quiz. See how many questions you can get right. And those will both be loaded in the classroom where you found this video. So take care. I look forward to talking to you all soon. As always, if you have tech questions or problems or just need some tech help, give me a call, send me a text, send me an email, and I'll be right there with you. Take good care.